Welcome to another episode of the Crimson Mask Podcast. I'm Austin, aka Odinsbeard43. You can find me on Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram at Odinsbeard43.
And I'm Izzy, and you can find me on Facebook. And if I don't have you, there's probably a reason why.
You're on Twitter, kinda.
Yeah, kinda. I check it every once in a while. I still have like 2 followers, so yeah, I'm popular.
And of course, I am the Shane Show Baby. You can follow me on everything also at Shane Show Baby. Yeah, especially if you're female in Texas and Austin, this is the Shane Show Baby. And today we have a very special podcast, and it is the one and the only. It's the lowlife Christian Rose. How you doing, Christian?
Hi, everybody. I'm professional wrestling participant, Christian Rose. You can follow me on Twitter at Bitter Lunatic. That's my favored social media platform. Appreciate more followers. I'm really good at Twitter, guys. I'm hilarious on Twitter. You can also add me on Snapchat, also at Bitter Lunatic, and you can add me on Facebook. If I don't respond, it's because I don't like Facebook. For me, it's the white trash of social media. I only use it to really share and promote shows. I've tried not to be that active on it, and I'm always cruising the garage sale section of Facebook looking for junk to buy. But yeah, that's all my social media stuff. Christian Rose on Facebook, Bitter Lunatic on Twitter, Bitter Lunatic on Snapchat. My Snapchat is usually just a mixture of gym stuff. I'm a pretty good cook, so there's a lot of one of my friends actually said that your Snapchat is just food porn. So there's a lot of that, and then sometimes I try to do funny stuff on there.
Yeah, didn't you get Braden in it one day when you guys were working out?
Yeah, I've been Braden wants to get big, so he's been working out with me, and I like doing funny Snapchats at the end of our workouts about how he's in this pursuit of getting big is going to die. So that's the funny joke.
Alrighty. So I within all the other podcasts that we've done, we always mention Zawa Live, and Rose is the Zawa Live champion, and he has a match coming up on the 2nd against Chiron, and other than that, he has Dreamwave here in 2 weeks from tomorrow, or a week from tomorrow. 1 week from tomorrow. Holy shit. That's going to be a blast. And then you go down to Journey Pro all the time too, right?
Correct. That's also next week. Next weekend is going to be a pretty long haul for me. I have Journey Pro on Thursday. Nothing specific on Friday, and then Dreamwave on Saturday, and then Recovery on Sunday. So it's going to be a packed weekend. And it's funny to me that it's 2 shows that for me are at different ends of the extreme travel-wise, because right now Journey's the longest trip that I make on a regular basis. It's 6.5, 7 hours each way from my place, and then Dreamwave is about 10 minutes. So it's a real shift of gears.
So how did you feel when you got the text or the call that Dreamwave's coming back for a reunion?
I actually got told face to face. The owner promoter J-Rep and me have been friends for years now, and I was at his house earlier this year. We were just grilling, having beers, hanging out on the deck and stuff, and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna bring it back. And I was over the moon. I was ecstatic. I've never shied away from the fact that that place made me 100%. A lot of it was just luck and right place, right time. And Jay saw something in me that other promoters up until that point hadn't. Gave me a just opportunity after opportunity, time and time again. I think I capitalized on those. I mean, I always did the best that I could, obviously, but I think I was able to take that run that I had at Dreamwave and use it elsewhere to get footholds in other promotions, and to just not stay there and use it to get into elsewhere. Before the Dreamwave run, I was basically just a Central Illinois guy. Didn't have a whole lot of a character. I was just a guy doing moves. I had some like ideas of what I wanted to be and where I wanted to go at that point. And yeah, just kind of, I always felt bad because like Dreamwave did tryouts, and I think that was something that like now a lot of independents are missing out on, because that built this like, vibe of exclusivity. Like I knew about Dreamwave and I wanted to get in there, didn't know how to do it. And I remember I was on a show with Mason Beck, and he was already there. And I asked him, I was like, how do I get booked at Dreamwave? And he said that, you know, they're looking for characters. And keep in mind what I said, like at the time, I'm just a guy, you know, throwing elbows, and that's it. So, dude, I brainstormed for like 3 weeks straight. I was like taking a notebook to my job and trying to come up with different characters and different ideas. And I'm so glad I didn't act on any of them, because they were all really bad. But I was just, like, you know, reaching for something, and couldn't get anything that worked. And then not long after that, I stumbled into doing kind of the early stages of the Bitter Lunatic thing. Again, kind of by accident, and also out of spite, which we can come back to if need be. And then Jay got my number from somebody, and he contacted me. And I still remember the text. It was just, "Hi, I'm, you know, Jay Repsol. I run Dreamwave Wrestling. Would you like to work for me?" Yeah, absolutely. You know, I've been dying to. But then as soon as I said, yeah, absolutely, you know, when, you know, let's hammer out details. As soon as I sent that message, I had this like crushing, oh no moment, because not only did they do tryouts, but like sometimes they would legitimately come up with characters and like repackage people. So like Waylon Beck wasn't always Waylon Beck. He became Waylon Beck from Dreamwave. So as soon as I agreed to come up there, I was like, oh no, what if he has some idea for me and it's something that like I don't like, or that I think is stupid, or that I can't pull off. So as soon as I said, yeah, I was like, maybe I should have stretched this out a little bit before just jumping in. And I was like, so then I had to ask, and keep in mind at this point, I don't know the guy. And I'm like, so do you have any idea what you want me to do? And he said, like, well, I want you to be a heel, which I was like, okay, cool. I'm much more comfortable with that. And he's like, and I want you to be a very, like, oh, what did he put it? It was like a dark, brooding character. He's like a little bit of Jimmy Jacobs, a little bit of Raven, and something. And I was like, okay, awesome, because this is like right in my, especially at that time, right in my wheelhouse. This is straight up my alley. That was in 2011. So I was like, you know, thank God, everything just kind of like really fell into my lap. And yeah, debuted in November of 2011, or no, I'm sorry, it would have been October of 2011. And we were just off to the races.
Excellent. So it's pretty much your anniversary on the reunion.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. It's kind of odd that it like all falls together like that, because I had to think about it. Oh no, actually, I take that back, because they did run December. It's almost my anniversary. My first match there would have been in November, because we did November and December, because I can remember my first 3 shows very clearly. And then they took January off, because it's the Midwest and you can't trust the weather. So yeah, it's almost the anniversary.
That's excellent.
I've really got to know if you remember any of those characters that were terrible, at least like 1 or 2 of them that you're like, yeah, this will work. And you thought about it, you're like, oh, never mind.
The one, I had like 1 or 2 that were almost the same thing, but in my mind were slightly different. One of them that was actually going to be an extreme, the idea of the character was going to be an extreme sports junkie. So I wanted to basically build this idea that, like, you know, I've done rock climbing and hang gliding and competitive yacht racing and, you know, all this other stuff, and nothing gives me a rush anymore, but pro wrestling is the next extreme sport for me to conquer. And it's like, like at the time I was like, oh man, this is a thing, and then now I think,
you know, that kind of takes PJ Black and where was it? Lucha Underground, I think, is where they had him doing like the motocross and everything. That's exactly where my head went. I'm like, that actually became a thing.
He did it and was able to make it work, but like I would not have been able to do this. You know what I mean? Like I would not have been able to pull it off. One of them was actually going to be, because at the time I was working a night job at a candy factory. I was going to the gym, and then I was wrestling every Wednesday night and every weekend. So I was perpetually exhausted. I was sleeping like 4 to 6 hours, 6 hours on a good day. Usually sleeping about 4 hours a day. So then I had the idea of like, why don't I just do a character that's addicted, that's just a complete caffeine junkie? And I saw that one episode of Futurama where
Right.
cups, and I was like, that is what this character is. And I had this idea that like I would come to the ring with like different, and I ended up actually using energy drinks in some of my matches, so that kind of hung on. But like it was gonna be like me coming to the ring just chugging Red Bulls, and then like filming promos with like a jittery coffee cup, and just being like, yeah, another match coming up, guys, and whatever. But like, yeah, again, I think that was a thing where I thought about it, and then as soon as I tried to think past like 2 shows worth of what can you do there, I was like, wow, after that it kind of just runs its course. There's not much you can do with it.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 that I remember clearly, and then I feel like there was something else that would have been like, a lot of the stuff also too was stuff that it just didn't have the production means to do, because like there's not a lot of production money on the independents, so then you got to fork it up yourself, and at the time I had like no money. So I remember there was also another thing that was going to be almost like a kind of a superhero gimmick. It was going to be something with like a mask that I would wear to the ring but not wrestle in. That one didn't last long. That one I remember putting like a big X through, because I was like, I can't do this. I'd have to pay for it for 1, and 2. I've never wrestled in a mask or anything. I couldn't breathe in it, so that got the axe right away.
So since we're on the Dreamwave talk, one of the reasons me and you actually met each other and actually had a conversation was because of my favorite match I've ever experienced live. It was you versus Cage at Dreamwave 100. What is your favorite match of Dreamwave?
It's really hard for me to pinpoint one, because like if you ask me that today, I can give you this answer. If you ask me this same question tomorrow, I'll probably give you a different one. So I'll do like my top 3. I had somehow, me and Cage have had so many matches, especially for several years there. We literally several hundred. But we only had 2 the entire run of Dreamwave. I love both of them for completely different reasons. So those 2 are always kind of like 1A and 1B for like the best thing I did at Dreamwave. And then the other one, if I go top 3 total, is actually I had a match with Bucky Collins that main evented Dreamwave, and I think it's one of the best things that I ever got to do. I love Bucky. I think Bucky is there's a lot of talk about like underrated guys, and like Bucky is the one, like 100%. Like the phrase that we use in locker rooms and stuff is Bucky don't have bad matches. No. And I was really, really happy with that match that we had at Dreamwave, because I was positioned to be a top guy, and Bucky wasn't. So during the height of that, like I'm the champion, I'm undefeated thing, it got really hard to have matches that people thought I could lose, because that whole build and everything, like I was really, really protected, and Bucky was a mid-card guy. So we were able to have that match and do it in a way where there were at least two occasions where the crowd thought Bucky was going to beat me. And I was so happy with that, because then it proved that, like, anybody, it made it seem possible, because like just on paper at the time, fans, you know what I mean? Like they didn't buy it. But then during the course of that match, there were at least 2 instances where, like people came up out of their seats on the 2 count, you know what I mean? And then it was okay. So those 3 are probably my top 3, which is weird because I wrestled so many names there, and none of those are in my top 3.
I was actually just going through, and I saw names that like people that are more mainstream wrestling fans would notice is John Hennigan, Morrison, Ali. I don't know who else you really wrestled at Dreamwave. Those were the 2 that popped. That was at Dreamwave? I know we talked about that.
Technically, I also wrestled Rhino for Dreamwave. Matt Hardy was my first like big name match there. That match was really, top best matches is one thing. Most important matches to me is a different thing.
Yeah.
The Matt Hardy match was really important in my career, because that was the first time that I got the nod to work with a bona fide, like the guy, he's been to WrestleMania, you know what I mean? Like, and we tore it up. I really liked that match. And I think that there were guys in the locker room at that time that expected me to fail, and I didn't. So, and then past that, Jay was like, oh, okay, well, we can trust him with whoever. And it's not going to, like, disappoint. So that was a very important match for me, kind of like a turning point type deal. It was also the first time that the fans started to show that they wanted to cheer for me in that place, which was always one of my favorite things to, like, watch, because you have your regular fans, and I always love watching the same fans that are there turn their emotions with different wrestlers as time goes on, and the characters evolve and progress and they change. Because for the first year I was there, I was just getting massive heat every show, and I was doing the undefeated thing, and there were the same people that were just begging for me to lose. After that match, were like begging for me to win. So
Guilty.
Really,
Guilty.
I think part of it too is just because, like, that was the thing that made people realize that, like, that streak wasn't just a joke, because it's easy to, like, bring a guy in, you put him over on your own guys, and he beats all your local talent. But then when you have him wrestle a legitimate WWE superstar, one half of one of the best and most important tag teams of all time, and he wins, then it's like, oh, this is a real thing. It's not just a short shove.
And I think that's
So-
one of the reasons.
I know there were jitters, but how bad were they when?
Oh, like, how nervous was I? For that one, I was very antsy. I was antsy for, like, weeks going up to it, because they did something that year that I don't think they'd done at Dreamwave before or since, where they announced their 3 guests for the next 3 shows at a row. They were like, next month it's Rikishi, the month after that it's Billy Gunn, and after that it's Matt Hardy. So as soon as that got announced, I went to Jay and was like, hey, I want to work with Matt Hardy. It's like, I've been here for almost a year. I haven't asked you for anything. I show up early, I stay late, I do what I'm told. I want to work with him. And he was really hesitant at first to do it, and then did. So then once he told me, hey, this is happening, I was like, oh shit. So then I was like, I start, like, focusing on stuff. I start, like, dude, I was doing like 60 minutes on a treadmill every day, and then lifting after that. I was scrawny as hell. And just, like, really nervous and really antsy. And then, like, a week or 2 weeks before the show, Hardy had a really bad spill at a show out in Philly and got a really bad concussion. So I got a text, and it was like, hey man, that match may not happen now. And I was, like, crushed. I was just absolutely crushed. 2 or 3 days later, we get confirmation. He's like, no, I'll be there. I'll be fine, whatever. So then I was like, whew. But then I was also more nervous, because I'm like, this guy's just coming off of, like, a serious head injury. Like, I don't want this to disappoint. And guy was awesome. Still got his number. Every so often we chat about TV shows and stuff. But, like, sometimes you hear horror stories about, guys that have been to the top and they come back to the indies and they don't want to do anything. And they're just like, oh, no, kid, I just got to, hit my pose and that's it. And, man, he wanted to do a lot. So, like, we did a lot. And, like, he took crazy bumps for me and all this other stuff. Keep in mind, like, he just got his brain scrambled, like, 2 weeks prior to this. But, yeah, that was really, really important for me. I was super nervous. I get mildly nervous before every match. There's been a couple where I was, like, real antsy. I was in a match with Vader. I was real nervous about that. But yeah, still here. So
I think one of the reasons I connected so well with you as a wrestler was because of your matches. All your matches, even up to date, it's all about psychology in the ring, story in the ring. Is that important to you? I know a lot of the bigger companies, they kind of slack in stories in the ring, but with your matches, it's always a story, no matter if it's Dreamwave, Journey Pro, Zawa Live. Is it important to you to have psychology and a story in the ring?
It's extremely important because for me, it's all I've got. Like, I'm not. There's so many things now that you see athletically in wrestling rings that, like, I'm not going to lie about. I can't do. You know, there's just stuff that, like, I physically can't do. There's stuff that I can't keep up with. So if I can't do a moonsault. You know, I can't do a reverse Rana. I can't do a 450 splash. So to me, my attitude is like, well, if everyone else can do these dazzling things and I can't, I'm not going to try because it'll look bad, for one. But my other mindset is if I can hook an audience on not doing those things, and if I can be the one match, and that's not to say that there aren't other people that, you know, don't put psychology in the matches. There are. But if I can be the guy that puts psychology into a match and that hooks people and that gets me noticed and it keeps me getting booked and it keeps fans coming back, then that's what I'm going to do. Like, I can have technical I can't do like Jonathan Gresham or Zack Sabre Jr. You know what I mean? Like, I just can't do it. So I think it's an old Paul Heyman quote of accentuate the positives and hide the negatives. So for me, if the negative is that I can't, you know, do a bunch of lucha libre and I can't do a bunch of dazzling dives, don't go there. If the positive is that I can structure things in a way that gets my opponent over and gets a reaction from the crowd, then I'm going to lean into that, heavily lean into that. The creative aspect is the thing that drives me most about wrestling. I love good wrestling. Don't get me wrong. I love good wrestling matches. But the psychological aspect of it and the creative aspect of it is the stuff that, like, keeps me awake at night. Where, oh man, this is, you know, Kyron does this, but what if this happened? And then that way he can't do the thing, or, you know, something, whatever the case may be. I think that it's not gone from the independents. There's still guys that, like, Jeremy Wyatt is a master storyteller right now. Probably the best wrestler in the Midwest overall, period, because he can do just damn near anything. So there are guys out there that still do it. I think that there's just less of them.
Right.
But to answer your question, yeah, man, it's all I got. That's my bread and butter. Like,
Yeah,
that and elbows and boots. That's where it is.
That match at Dreamwave 100, I'll never forget it. Like, me and my buddy, we drove all the way back an hour home, and that's the only thing we talked about was that match, because it was just the psychology, the story, the build-up. It was a perfect storm. It really was. And, you know, I bought the DVD just for that match.
You know what's weird? I don't think I've ever rewatched it.
Really?
I don't
Shane's
remember
gonna make you
ever
now.
rewatched it. I remember things from it, but I don't think I've ever actually sat down and rewatched it. And if I have, then I've forgotten about it.
It was just a perfect storm. Me and the crowd. I mean, there was times people were booing you, but then they were, you know, changed it to boo Cage, and just because the emotions were everywhere because of the story. Like, I
agree. Like, the rivalry with Cage is probably, even still, like, I've gotten to do a lot of really cool stuff, but even still, that whole rivalry with Cage is probably still the best thing that I've done, because it went on for 6 years across a couple dozen promotions in a bunch of states. You know what I mean? Like, that, for a while, that was our traveling match. And I love that we were able to tell that story, all those promotions and all those matches, that I never got him until the last one. So it was the perfect build. It was the perfect storm. We debated on what the end of that should be. Like,
really?
Legit almost went the other route, because I was like, man, it's a downer of an ending, but sometimes I like a downer ending. It might have been a cool ending if he had gotten me, and I never did.
That's true. But it was a good ending, though.
Yeah, I think once we got to that point, I don't even remember how we decided, honestly. I remember, like, me and him talking about it. That we didn't talk about that match until that day. Like, I think after the doors had opened, I was like, what are we going to do, you know? But, yeah, I easily could have flipped that finish, and it still would have been over, and it still would have been good. It just would have gotten a different reaction at the end. I don't know that it would have been better. I don't know that it would have been worse. But still, creatively and psychologically, I think that's the best match I've had.
Yes.
From that aspect.
That I've seen, yes.
And I know you mentioned that that went across a bunch of different promotions, and actually the first time I went to a Zawa Live, or not a Zawa Live, it was a Funky Monkey show. It was you guys were going against each other. This was back when Judd was going against heel Bobby Houston. Bucky almost died taking a pile driver that night. I'm never
Yeah,
gonna
he'll do
forget
that.
that. I still talk to him about that, and it was Double T, and I'm like, I freaked out because that was like the first match I saw, and I'm like, holy shit. And then you guys came out and you guys absolutely killed it. And at the time, only person I knew was Judd, just because I knew him from outside of wrestling. So I gotta start getting to see all you guys just tear it up and everything, and instantly became more of an indie wrestling fan than I was.
Cage was probably, not was. Cage is definitely my overall best opponent that I've had. Like, me and him lived together for probably, like, I think it was 8 years total. Like, in a bunch of different houses and stuff. Traveled together, worked out together, trained together, all of this stuff. And just had, like, a good natural bond and good natural chemistry. He was much more athletic than I was. I think that kind of helped complement each other's styles a little bit. I think, if I remember correctly, and I'm probably not, the show that you're talking about, I think that was the one where we did like a time limit draw.
I
Because-
could not tell you to be honest. It was so long ago, and that was a bad part of my life. So I really kind of block a lot of that out. I do remember you guys going against each other. I remember you were doing your Olay kicks outside the ring with him on the chair, and while the ref was counting, every time you just do like a little spin into the ring and duck right back out. And
break the count.
Yeah, and I was sitting there dying because that's the first time I ever seen somebody, because you like would like stick your head in and you do like a sideways cartwheel almost, like your legs would come all the way around and everything. I was dying laughing.
That's something that I think more people should do. Respect the rules of pro wrestling matches and don't make the referees look like an idiot. So that when a bad guy breaks the rules, it matters. So anytime that I'm brawling on the outside, if it's just a match, I do that all the time to break the count, because it's real stupid and it makes everyone look bad if the referee goes 8, 9, come on guys, get back in the ring, 1. Well, then why are we even doing anything? But it gets more of a reaction to almost get counted out, break the count, restart it, and then just keep fighting on the outside.
Yep.
Like, there's a lot of people that don't know how countouts actually work. Technically speaking, if I'm doing those stupid Olay kicks that I stole from Samoa Joe, then if I just get in the ring, if we're both on the outside and the referee is at 8, and I get in the ring and I don't go back out, the count continues.
Yep.
And Cage loses unless he gets inside. So you got to go in and go back out in order to restart the count. There's legit referees that don't know this. I was in a triple threat match one time, and I got thrown to the outside onto the floor. This was in Indiana. There's like 8 people in the crowd. I have already checked out. I get thrown to the outside on the floor during a triple threat match. The referee starts counting me out. And I'm laying on the floor, and I look up, and I just scream, there's no count outs in a triple threat match. And the mid-count just kind of stops, and it's like,
oh, yeah.
And I'm screaming. Everyone can hear me. And I just go, if you count me out, who wins? And he just goes, and then turns around and goes back to the other 2 guys in the ring.
Holy cow.
Too funny.
Oh my god.
It's the same thing as, like, you can't do disqualifications in that match. If I get disqualified, well, then who's the guy that wins? Is it the guy that I kick in the dick, or is it just the odd man out who didn't do anything wrong? Like, there's no rules.
Since you mentioned bad guys and stuff, does it bother you when you're a heel and you get cheers, or is that you just kind of like fans get to pick who they like?
My mindset on this is, as long as people are making noise. Like, right. Granted, if I'm a villain, if I'm a heel, I do want them to boo me. That's the desired reaction. Some people are just innately drawn to cheer for villains. I get that. Dan the Man, and me had this conversation a couple months ago, and he's like, well, you're a good wrestler, so people just cheer good wrestlers. And I'm like, I don't want to get heat by just being bad in matches. Like, that's not what I want to do.
Right.
To me, as long as you're making noise, like, granted, I'm aiming for jeers. That's what I'm looking for. But if you're invested and you're involved in the match and you're paying attention and stuff, good. Silence is what I don't want. That's not good. So, like, to me, you pay for a ticket, you cheer who you want, you boo who you want. That's your right. And I will never tell somebody to like, go against that, you know? Like,
Right.
But just as long as they're making noise, as long as they're enjoying what they see.
So, who then, like, in your opinion, like, let's say in like WWE or AEW, who do you think is somebody that plays that up? Like, they can get heat no matter what they do, in your opinion? Like, somebody who plays a good bad guy.
Despite him having been out of the game for a while now, Edge.
Yeah.
Edge was so good at being a genuine heel, because I steal a lot, like match structure and psychologically, I steal a lot from him, because he had that fine balance of, like, sometimes he'd do something kind of cool, like, you know, oh, he speared Rey Mysterio out of the air or something, but, like, normally he really didn't do anything, like, super cool. Everything he did made sense, and it always was for that reaction. I loved Edge anytime that he had goons, if it was Lita or Vicky Guerrero or the Edgeheads, he used the goons properly. Yep. He's one of the only guys that, like, remember in, like, I want to say 2006, when people just decided it's cool to boo John Cena? Yeah. Even if they did like him, they were just like, we're going to boo Cena. Edge was the only guy that got a heel reaction against Cena during that time period. I think that he's a master of it. I'm a huge Chris Jericho fan. He's probably my favorite of all time. There are certain points in his run, because, like, he reinvents himself every so often. Yep. There are certain points where he's my favorite feud of all time is in 2008, him and Shawn Michaels.
Oh yeah,
eye injury and everything. Suit wearing Anton Chigurh channeling Chris Jericho had such good heat, just massive heat. Legitimately told the company he didn't want merchandise, that do not make Chris Jericho shirts, and they didn't, because he didn't want any fans to have any of the stuff to support. JBL during his run was also another one. He's one of the last good heels. Miz is an amazing heel. I think that Miz might be the actual last great heel, because everyone hates him. Everyone hates
he's getting cheered now. He's a face now, though.
Yeah, I hate him as a face.
Oh, so
he's still being a heel.
He's a great heel.
Those guys, I think, are probably the last ones, because we're in this era now where I almost feel like nobody wants to be a genuine villain. I think that people now are in this, like, weird, almost Game of Thrones setting where they want just characters that have depth, and they shift and they change, and this is just who they are. And I'm not saying that that's bad or that's wrong, because, like, it's got to evolve, it's got to change. Mm-hmm. But I only like villains that are at one end of the spectrum or the other. I like villains that are, like, deep and layered, and they have a justification for why they're evil. And there's, you know, they're just misguided or something. They mean well, but they're just, you know, doing it the wrong way. I think those type of villains in wrestling, movies, whatever, are amazing. I also love ones that are just innately evil for no reason. They're just a dick. And they're not going to change. Those villains are really hard to do in any medium, especially wrestling. I think another thing that's lacking when it comes to villains these days is everyone wants to be a badass. Yeah. And people cheer for badasses, man. Like, it's human nature. You almost can't help it. There's few exceptions to this. Before he got injured, Tommaso Ciampa had really zoned in on that. He is a bad man, but he still got booed, and that's really hard to pull off.
Yep. Well, it helps when you attack one of the biggest faces in the company.
Repeatedly.
Yeah. Multiple times.
And see, that's like the thing with like Zawa Live. Like, you get cheers at Zawa. I think it's, you know, it's because you're a good wrestler. You're respected in Zawa. And when I went to Journey Pro, you got booed in the whole building, and there I was sitting in a Rose shirt and a Rose hat, and like I'm like, okay, like this is a completely different atmosphere. Like,
Yeah.
but does that change quite a bit when you go to different promotions? Like, is the fans different everywhere you go?
For the most part, I mean, kind of, yeah. Like 0-1, I'm pretty well hated. Like, I don't think there's anybody there. I don't think there's one person in that crowd that cheers for me at this point, and that's fine. That's what my role there is. That's my job. Journey, I think after the match with Shotzi, there actually have been some people that are starting to cheer for me. I have fans come up to me after the shows, and they'll be like, "Hey, man, we really like your match tonight. It's getting hard to boo you." And so that may be something that like we change in the future. Then like do something different, go a different route. But also like every crowd is different. Like 0-1 is it's family based. It's a lot of kids. It's very grassroots pro wrestling. Journey is kind of marketed towards like a more hipster crowd. It's in a bar, so like you know what I mean. Like everyone there is 21. They just want to have fun. They respect good wrestling, but they're not always. There's a good chunk of that audience that's like wrestling fans, but a lot of them are just there because they're Journey Pro fans, and I think that's awesome. I think we should aim for casual fans because wrestling fans will go to wrestling shows.
Yeah,
that's what they do. You got to aim for the people that don't know what wrestling is or don't know the independents exist. Zawa is kind of in that weird middle spot for me where I kind of think that like I think a lot of times the reaction that I get is more dictated on who I'm in the ring with.
Yeah.
At Zawa. Like it's almost like they'll be like, "Oh, well, kind of like Rose, but we like Bailey better." So, yay Bailey, boo Rose. And then if it's a couple months ago when we did that tag match with me and Bailey against the Fun Police, they're like, "Oh, well, we hate the Fun Police, so yay Rose." You know what I mean? Like it kind of just fluctuates a little bit.
And then you kicked Heather Reckless in the face and got booed.
Yeah, you opened the eyes of people in Oregon like crazy.
Whole match, and I got it.
But that, like, you were talking about the way Edge would do stuff, and you steal a lot from him, and that kind of made me think of that, to be honest, because it made me think of there was the one night stand where Edge speared Dreamer's Beulah. Yeah. And that made me think of that kick you did, and I'm like, yeah, I can see that.
I think the guys that I steal the most from so far as like psychology and match structure would be Orton, Jericho, Edge, and Jake Roberts. Those are the guys that like I can watch their matches and be like, oh, that's brilliant, and then yoink, and it goes right in my back pocket for later use.
Yeah, Jake Roberts had really good psychology.
That was my first favorite wrestler. He was the guy that made me want to do it when I was a kid.
So speaking of like old style wrestling, so let's say all the managers were alive and kicking right now. Who would you say would be the perfect manager for Christian Rose? That's
a really good one.
I don't know if he's in the same spot for you, but I'm pointing at Shane.
No, I mean like the back in the day stable. You had Fuji, Heenan, Jimmy Hart, all those kinds.
If you're going like back in the day, it would probably have to be Heenan.
Yeah.
For me, if you're going like kind of back in the day, a little bit more towards the 90s, Paul Heyman, specifically Paul E with the gigantic cell phone.
Paul E dangerously.
Would be like awesome. That would be great. But Heenan, in my mind, could do no wrong. I think that him and Heyman, for me, are like tied almost neck and neck for best manager of all time. I think that Heenan definitely had a more varied career and managed more guys. I think that Heyman now has spent so much time just doing the bit with Lesnar that people have forgotten Heyman back then was
the Dangerous Alliance Heyman and all that.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that Heenan was a great man. I wish we had more managers now.
Yeah. I was actually about to.
Yeah.
I was going to say that.
The last one that I really enjoyed was when Umaga was paired with Estrada.
Yes.
I thought he was an awesome manager. They should have never broke that duo up.
Well,
heel managers are the best, though.
Yeah.
And going along with that, like, how over did Midnight get when they came into Zawa? When I can't think, Brooke Valentine and them came in. I'm like, this is awesome. Like, that we need more of this, where he's jabbing at fans pretty much the entire wrestling match and everything.
It's funny too because I'm technically a member of the Yacht Club. Like I did shows for 3XW over in Iowa this year, and they put me with Midnight, and he's a really good friend of mine. So I was excited because I was just like, I love this guy already. I was excited to work with him, and we did some really fun stuff with him as a manager and me as his charge or whatever. Really hope that we get to do more of it in the future. So, But yeah, Midnight is right now one of the best managers on the independents, which I know it's a short list, but he's still at the top of it.
His promos, his video promos are so good, like very good.
Nothing bad to say about Midnight.
So about managers, kind of a different question, but since you know Zawa Live, what would be a perfect wrestler to have a manager for Zawa? What wrestler should have a manager?
Oh. Okay, I follow you now.
Sorry, worded that wrong. Like came in properly.
So like who on the Zawa roster do I think would benefit most from having a manager?
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah.
The Academy.
Yes. Yep. Yes.
I think Tyler Pringle's another one of those like unbelievably underrated guys. I've been in the ring with some strong men, and I've been in the ring with Tyler Pringle. I think Berna is starting to click. Like it's starting to come together for him. And he may be good on the microphone. I don't know. I've never seen him actually talk, but in my mind, I would definitely give those two a very loud, a Bobby Heenan, if you will, like a very loud, very animated manager. I think that would just complete that whole ensemble. And I have always loved managers with tag teams. Cornette, great manager. I think he was always better when he was with a team than he was even with like Cornette and Vader was pretty great, but like I loved Cornette more when he's hyping up, Midnight Express. Yeah, probably those two.
Definitely. I actually told some of our friends that I think that for Zawa Live, since Berna and Tyler, went heel, that maybe they should join forces with Connor Hopkins and then get a manager and kind of have a little faction going on.
I love a good dog and pony show in wrestling. That's another thing that I think is missing now. A number of years ago, they had it in Ring of Honor with Larry Sweeney, and when he was managing Chris Hero, and they had this whole entourage around Chris Hero, and the idea was like Larry Sweeney is Chris Hero's agent, and he's coming out throwing business cards into the crowd, and he's always on his cell phone. Hero's doing flips. They had like Tank Tolan, who was like super jacked. He was one of the dicks for a brief run in WWE. He's like his personal trainer, and then like Sarah Del Rey was just there. They had like Bobby Dempsey as their stooge, and they had this whole entourage and this not lavish, but this whole production around Chris Hero. And that's another thing that I think is missing now, is that like everybody wants to be a badass and everybody wants to be a wrestler. Nobody wants to go to a show and just be like, oh, I'm a goon. Cool.
Right. That almost reminds me of when Lashley was in Impact, and he had like that whole entourage where he was the Billy Badass, and everybody else around him was there. Like he had a promoter, he had a spokesperson, he had this, he had that. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Something like that is sorely needed in wrestling, just to give the entertainment.
So you were talking about things that you want to see used more with managers and like the whole entourage kind of stuff. What's a gimmick that's overused?
All of them.
Was there something that like stands out? Because I know a lot of no ring stuff has been going on now that got super popular for a hot minute and stuff like that. And I know there was a little bit of an uproar on that, but
like as far as like gimmicks, like types of matches or something that I think are overused. I really think that there's too much of a reliance on. I think there's too much of a reliance on hardcore stuff. I think that okay, so like for example, GCW is fine. That's their whole thing, and they make it work. So I'm not saying that there's like no place for it. I think that a lot of promotions, though, that just try to run wrestling shows over rely on it. Because if you see it all the time, it's not special.
Yeah.
And the more you see it, the less it means. I hate anything that involves refs' discretion when it's like across the board in a promotion. Because there's a lot of companies that are just like, no disqualifications, no countouts, whatever. Well, then it's like, why are we tagging in and out in a tag match? Why are guys not just eye gouging people? Why are you wrestling at all? Like, if there's no rules, why are you adhering to them? And furthermore, how can a bad guy become hated by breaking the rules? Screw it, I'll name him. I'm not going back there. I wrestled for AAW for a while, and I did not know. I was there for like a couple of shows and did not know that this was a thing. So I'm having a match with, might have been ACH or somebody. I don't remember. I throw the dude to the floor. I tell the ref, I'm like, count him out. Well, he didn't. And I'm like, hey, I said count him out. And the ref's like, there's no count outs here. And I didn't know this. This is happening in the match, like, in front of these people. And I go, what? And he goes, there's no count outs or disqualifications. And I'm like, I just snapped and just screamed, what happens if I kick him in the dick? And he didn't have an answer for me. So, like, whatever, I went outside of the ring, got the guy, and we carried on, had the match. And afterwards, I was like, what legit would happen if I just did that? And they're like, well, we'd end the match. And I go, but there's no disqualifications. And they're like, well, it's ref's discretion. And I'm like, what sense does that make? Like, how then can you have a street fight?
Every match is a street fight.
So, like, stuff like that I think is grossly overused. I think people are afraid to do disqualifications now. And I think they're afraid to do countouts. You just don't see it happen very often. And it's this weird thing where it's like, I think that promoters and wrestlers are afraid that fans won't come back because they didn't see a finish. And it's like, no, they'll if you do it the right way, they'll come back.
They want to see an ending to this match. And if you play it off where it's like, oh, I'm done, the other guy's like, no, you're not, I'm coming for you.
Right.
It's going to bring butts in the seats.
Now, granted, there's ways to do a non-finish that are bad. Hell in a Cell.
I was just about to say.
But there are plenty of ways to do, like, there was a lot of matches that I had at Dreamwave that people don't remember going to, as we would call it, a schmaz finish. But they did. And that was because, like, well, Rose can't lose, but we can't, whatever the case may be. People still came back. So if you do it the right way, it's fine. If you do it the wrong way, it is disastrous. But I think that ref's discretion, we don't do countouts or disqualifications, to me is just lazy creatively.
Yep.
Now, Izzy, I saw a little smirk when he mentioned the hardcore stuff. And I've had a discussion with Rose about how I'm a fan of death matches and stuff like that before. And I know he's not super into them or anything. That's not his thing. But we've talked about it. You said you get why people are attracted to them, right, Rose?
Yeah. Like, I mean, I understand that there's a market for it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care for it. I don't get it. But you see GCW packing venues and going to Japan and doing everything. So that doesn't mean that it's bad or that it's wrong. It's just not for me. I look at it the same way as I don't care for Kevin Hart. I don't think he's a good actor. But he's got a lot of money and is in a lot of movies. So somebody's got to like him. It's just not for me. Same thing with, like, hardcore rap music. Not my bag, but dudes are still putting it out there. So that's kind of my deal with deathmatch stuff. Like, I don't like it. I could, selfishly crank up my inner Jim Cornette and tear it apart on how it doesn't make sense to me. But if the, 500 people going to see GCW every show, if it makes sense to them, cool. You know,
I-
that's
The question I was actually going to get to with that is, I know you've done some spots where it was hardcore, and I know we talked about that Shotzi match already, and you took a nice little bump on some tacks. Did you ever go back and see that part, by the way?
oh yeah, I've rewatched that. Yeah, I've rewatched
With
that.
all,
several
did you
times.
see what I was talking about? That was a ton of tacks actually stuck into your back.
Oh yeah.
That was a lot. But is there anything that like in a hardcore match and or no DQ match that you haven't done yet that you would still like to? At least just for an experience.
There's not anything that I'm like really driven to do in them. I've sworn I will never do anything involving glass ever. That's not my thing. I'm genuinely afraid of it. I had one street fight with Merrick Brave that involved barbed wire. I did not want to do it at all. He wanted to because it was a throwback to a match that he had with Rollins and everything. I'm like, I get that. I grew up on a farm. There was an incident. I have a genuine phobia of this barbed wire shit. I don't want it. So we kind of compromised. I wore like a leather gauntlet or whatever to use the barbed wire. That's not really my thing. I've done the tax twice now. I did one. First time was in a Monsters Ball match with Abyss for Dreamwave. That match is awesome. Really, really good. The conversation about the tax and everything with him was like hilarious. So we'll come back to that. But I, for some reason, for me, okay, I don't like to do hardcore stuff unless there's a reason to do it. I just don't like to throw it all under the bus. I have this weird thing where I like taking bumps on chairs. So, like, anytime that I can do that, that works for me. I kind of like ladder matches because there's a lot you can do with them. I have done enough of them now that I'm like, there's some things in ladder matches that I will do and some things that I will not. And most of the things that I will not do are things that I have done and was like, nope, never again. But the Abyss and the tax. So it was for Dreamwave. So, you know, no real lack of funds for toys and plunder. So, like, I get there that day, and they tell me, like, okay, we've got, I think it's like 2 tables and kendo sticks and blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. And they had legitimately 10,000 thumbtacks. 10,000 in a Crown Royal bag. The purple Crown Royal bag. Like, okay. So, like, I had some ideas. And we had some chairs and stuff to use. And so, like, Abyss is there, and we're talking stuff out in the back. And I'm like, hey, man, you've done infinitely more of these than I have. So, you know, teach me, help me, whatever you can do. He's like, all right, and asked, like, what all we had. And I told him about the tax. And he's like, okay, cool. And I was like, I think I should be the one to take them. And he was like, brother, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, it should be me. And he was like, okay, well, why? And I'm like, well, like, no disrespect, but, like, they've seen you fall in tax 1,000 times. They've never seen this out of me. They're not going to expect it. You wear a top. I don't. I think it'll be the highest point of the match, you know? And he's like, okay, sure. And he gave me a couple pointers on how to do it. Woof. And then I didn't do it again until a couple months ago with Shotzi. And, yeah, that was that.
Oh my god.
I got a different kind of question. I actually heard this question on a different podcast, and I actually thought it was a lot different than what I've ever heard before. Describe your life in a WWE match that has taken place.
Oh, geez. So, like, what? Okay, so just to make sure that I understand it, what WWE match would basically summarize my life?
Yes.
You ever see that one with Perry Saturn and that one jobber where he just screws everything
Yes.
up? Yep. On his head?
Yep.
Mike Bell. It was Mike Bell. Perry Saturn versus Mike Bell.
He got pissed during that.
That's why he had to dress in a skirt.
Catastrophe.
Date Moppy.
Yeah, we'll go with Perry Saturn versus Mike Bell. I think that sums up my existence pretty good.
Mine would be Trinity versus Alicia Fox.
Wait, was that the one where? Trinity versus. I don't remember that. Who was the girl that tried to pin the girl while she was laying on her stomach?
That was Okay, there was Naomi and the other girl that used to
Jack?
tag with her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Can't remember what her name was. Yeah. Count it.
You know,
Count
the
it.
chorus dancer.
No.
And then was somehow confused that the ref didn't count it. I'm like,
Yeah, she's like,
So, I have a question that it's a little bit more of a more fun question. So give your best road story, like one that comes to mind. You're like, that was fucking funny, or that was just a trip.
whew, I got a lot, so I'll try to pick one or two of the better ones that I can tell on here and that were just stupid funny. JJ Garrett has on 4 or 5 occasions failed at throwing a beverage out of a car window. And two of them that I was present for. One, he rolls the car window down just not far enough, throws the cup, doesn't make it, coffee explodes everywhere, all over him and his car. The other one was in North Dakota, and this idiot reaches over, he's doing like 75 on the interstate, and he has this cold coffee cup that is almost completely full he wants to get rid of. He reaches over and rolls down the window, presses the button. Well, what he doesn't realize is that he has rolled down the driver's side rear window, not the driver's side front window, and he just a full thing of coffee into a completely rolled up window just explodes everywhere. I start screaming at him like, how did you do this again? Like, just unreal stupid shit. Coming back from Arkansas one time with Cage, I had been up at this point for like 40 hours straight. It was a really, really grueling trip. And we got 6 hours to get home. I'm driving. Cage is in the car with me. And I'm like, okay, man, you have to stay awake. Because he was notorious at that point for sleeping in cars. We get to about 40 minutes left in the trip. Don't have to stop for gas. Don't have to stop for the bathroom. But I'm like, dude, I'm losing it. You got to talk to me. You got to yell at me, something, anything. I look over, and he's asleep. And I'm like, no. So I start like yelling at him to wake up. Doesn't wake up. I turn the heat on maximum hot. He doesn't wake up. I roll the windows down, so now there's cold air coming in from outside and hot air coming off of the heater. He still doesn't wake up. I start just yelling, not even like singing or words, just because now I'm like really uncomfortable, but I have to stay awake. 40 minutes of this. Nothing. Get to the apartment building. I've rolled up the windows, adjusted the heat, turned off the music. And as I pull into the apartment building where we park, there's like the tiniest little bump. We hit it, and he just goes, hey, are we home? I lost it. I completely lost it. I just started screaming at him. I was like, you can't do this ever again. I hate you so bad. I ought to make you sleep in the dirt. I was furious. Let me think. The trip from hell. I will give you just the bullet points because the trip from hell would honestly be a full-on podcast. It would be a separate episode. Coming back from IWA Mid-South, which was in basically Louisville, Kentucky, going to Davenport. You leave the venue. About 20 minutes away into our drive, flat tire. Okay? Get out, put on the donut. Just got to take our time getting home, guys. No big deal. South of Indianapolis, we hit this gargantuan pothole. Flat tire.
Oh.
Pull over to the side of the interstate, put the car on a jack, take the tire off. We got help from, it was actually Ruby Riot and her carload of people that were coming back from northern Indiana. They stopped. Me and one of the guys had to run across 8 lanes of interstate traffic with this tire, get in a car with them, go to Walmart. They're about to open the automotive department. It's like 6:50. They open at 7. I get there. I am tired. I'm stressed. Whatever. We need a tire for this rim. We're not open yet. Can't help us out. It's only going to be 10 minutes until you guys open. No, we're not open. They open. They say, well, we can't put a tire on this because the rim is bent. I go, where? They show me. I said, give me a hammer. So it's 7:02 in this Walmart. I'm beating the Christ out of this rim. They fix it. They put a tire on. We go back. It is now pouring rain, like monsoon. We go on foot back across 8 lanes of interstate traffic. Put this tire on. Lower the jack. Get in. Cage and Malachi are in the car. They're like, dude, a cop came while we were here. We had to explain to him that we're just guarding the car, whatever. I'm like, I don't care. I'm like screaming at traffic. I'm losing my mind. I'm screaming at traffic in the rain. I think it was Cage or Malachi was in the car, and they're just like, wow, he's finally lost it. So we get in, get out of Indiana. We're almost to Peoria, Illinois. Flat tire.
Jesus.
I'm broken at this point. I'm like, guys, I just want to go home. We got towed, but while we were waiting on a tow truck, Cage went walking up the interstate to go to a rest stop that he could see because he wanted to, use the bathroom or whatever. Who cares? He comes back. We're getting into the car that's going to go loaded onto the back of this giant flatbed tow truck. Cage comes walking back. He just has this shattered look on his face. I'm like, what happened to you now? And he goes, I was on my way back. People passing on the interstate threw trash at me. Somebody just hucked a bag of garbage at me. Walking down the side of the road. So we get in, finally got the tire fixed, finally got home. The 8-hour trip ended up taking 22.
Oh.
And that's just the bullet points, dude. There was so much insanity of that whole thing.
We got to have him back on because I want to hear this whole thing as a podcast. Just that story alone.
Just Jeff Jarrett getting drunk and screaming, and it just.
My next question is, if you were had to form a 4-horseman faction in the Indies with you included as one, if you had to pick 3 other members, who would you pick?
Well, I'm gonna keep it kind of low key because I don't want to go guys that are in PWG or whatever. Me, Jeremy Wyatt, Bucky, and Jake Durden.
That's a really good faction.
Zeke, book it.
Yeah. That's excellent. How about if you're in an intergender match, dream female tag partner?
You know what? I actually kind of like teaming with Rain. We teamed a couple of times at 0-1. We had that one match recently where I kicked Heather Reckless in the face. So yeah, even if it's not a big dream, fantasy one, I like her. I like working with her. So yeah, I'll pick her.
She's pretty cool, even though we give each other a lot of shit when she's at the shows. But
I got one. So obviously you were inspired to be a wrestler by all the older guys. Right now, though, which of these young guys inspires you just to keep upping your game?
Let's see. I really enjoy watching. There's guys that I enjoy watching on now there's a lot of wrestling on TV.
Yeah.
I've actually turned a corner on Darby Allin. At first I wasn't a fan, but now I dig his stuff. So I enjoy watching him. Drew Gulak is a guy that I really like watching. He's got that style that I really enjoy. Pete Dunne is another guy that big fan of Pete Dunne. And then I'm trying to think. Sometimes I tend not to watch a lot of the shows that I'm on, so I just got to pick those ones, I guess.
How about best opponent to date?
Cage. It's got to be Cage. Past him, Bucky is one of my favorite guys to wrestle with. Guy from down south named Joey O'Reilly. Me and him always have good matches. Yeah, I'd say those are probably my top 3.
Since Dreamwave's back, will you ever see Cage versus Rose again?
I don't know. We promoted that last one as,
The last.
one more time, one last time, but nothing stays permanent in wrestling.
Never say never.
Yeah, I was really hoping, because I knew that he was like getting out, that would be a good way to guarantee that it stayed the last one. But now he's taken a couple of bookings here and there. So I was like, you're opening the door to that. 'Cause who knows?
Is it hard to go back and wait? Go on.
My opinion about the product anymore is the bad thing about it is social media. What do you think the worst thing about the wrestling product anymore is?
Lack of continuity. The stuff that happens this week doesn't matter next week.
Yes.
The stuff that happened last week doesn't matter this week.
So you mean like the WWE draft?
If I was to pick one thing that I wish wrestling across the board on the independents, the big schemes, whatever, would just have and focus on, is just continuity. Because you can't have stakes if you don't have any continuity. If everything that you do is inconsequential, why do I keep tuning in? I don't even really watch. I barely watch WWE at all anymore. Like, I watch the pay-per-views, and I watch NXT. That's about it. Because I don't know. To me, that's everything else that I don't like about the current product falls under that umbrella.
Yeah.
I really think the wrestling should, with the writing, it should write from the end backwards. Figure out the end result is and go from there. Like,
yeah, traditionally that's how they did it. Like, supposedly in the early days of Manias, they would be like, okay, well, what do we want next year at WrestleMania? And they would work backwards from there. I think that's probably a bit exaggerated, because it's like, even then it would be really hard to be like, oh man, a year from now Savage is going to be hot, like, you don't necessarily know what, where you're going to go. But at the same time, like, yeah, like, hey, this is what we're going to, here's how we can get there, because then you can always adjust. You know what I mean? If a guy gets injured or gets, signed to a bigger deal or something, you can always change it, as long as you have like some direction of where you're going in the first place.
Right. So I was just wondering, like, you were talking about like watching matches and stuff that you did. Is it hard to go back and watch a match without like overly critiquing yourself, like, oh, I could have done this better, or I could have done that, or?
Kind of. Like, if it's a big match, like, I've watched that Shotzi match a bunch of times, and there's stuff in it that I've nitpicked and been like, that or the other. But then I try not to beat myself up over it, because I was there and it was really over and everyone loved it. So that's part of that, like, pseudo perfectionist thing. If I watch any of my really early stuff, which thank God not much of it is out there, it's painful, just painful. If I do watch the stuff, I try to look at it and be like, not, oh man, I can't believe I screwed that up. I try to look at it as like, okay, next time I need to do it this way, or just not do it at all.
Right.
Like, I like trying new moves or combinations or sequences or whatever, looking at it and being like, okay, this is something that I can either iron out and smooth and get crisp, or it's like, no, back in the
Cut
past.
that out. Yeah. All right.
Shane, you got one more?
Let me think. Yes. Me and a bunch of friends kind of got in this debate today. What is the best era in WWE?
Oof. Okay.
That is rough.
So it's really hard to say, because the good eras all have like huge valid points on why they're the good eras.
Yeah.
Right.
And because good and best are subjective. So people can say like, oh, well, in the 80s with Hogan on top, they made so much money. And that's a completely valid point. There's nothing against that at all. But when you talk about wrestling being good and, what was best, you can throw the money thing out there. But look at any other industry the same way, because there are people that are adamant about what brand of car they drive. Well, if I say, hey, man, Ford sold more F-150s than any other type of truck in the world, that seems like an easy, buy a Ford. There's going to be people that are like, nope, never going to do it. Didn't like them then, don't like them now. Same thing with wrestling, where it's like, yeah, it was financially, killing it, which obviously is kind of the goal. And when I say kind of, I mean is the goal. But at the same time, I can argue that the Attitude Era was when it permeated pop culture the most, and wrestling as a whole was cool across the board, everyone liked to watch it. Do the matches, does the in-ring hold up? No, it really doesn't. Like, there's very few matches from the Attitude Era that are worth rewatching. But another argument for it, everyone was over. That's the thing that I always go back to, when people besmirch the Attitude Era, and I'm not saying that it was the best. Everyone was over. Like, the guys that were on top, Austin, Rock, Triple H, Foley, Taker, Kane. First of all, that's a huge roster of top-end talent.
Right.
The mid-card was over. Val Venus was over. The Godfather was over. D'Lo, Jeff Jarrett, Too Cool, and Rikishi. Super over. And nobody wanted them to, like, break up Too Cool and let them feud because, Scotty 2 Hotty's being held back in this tag team. No, they were just, like, happy that they were there, that to me is the best thing about the Attitude Era. The actual content, not so much. And obviously they made money. The Attitude Era was also a huge boom period. Some people say that the mid '90s were the best period for the WWF because, like, the in-ring was good because you had Bret Hart was on top, Shawn Michaels was right there, Hennig, Davey Boy, British Bulldog, whatever. All these guys are great wrestlers. Financially, it was kind of a lull for them, and but I think that for me, the stuff that if I was to be like, this is the period that for me is the best. It's a really narrow one, and it's kind of the tail end of the Attitude Era, almost segueing into that Ruthless Aggression era. I think that from about 01 through 04, maybe even 03. For me, that's the stuff that I really like because you hit that sweet spot of everyone is over. The wrestling is good because that's when it's like, okay, you have Edge is coming up as a singles guy. Eddie is a singles guy. Benoit is a singles guy. Angle is there. Lesnar. Like, the in-ring is good. You still have your established names. Even some of them are fading out. Everyone was over. Like, yeah, that's kind of just my, like, greedy. I want everything to be over and make money. Take on
Well, and not only that, you had the buyout of WCW, so you had some of the WCW guys coming over. And even though the invasion was such a terrible thing to do, or at least it was done wrong, you still had that talent coming over, so you could have that fantasy booking if you wanted to, really.
I agree. I think the hottest period in wrestling is the last half of the 90s because WWF is on top with everything. The NWO thing in WCW was still going strong for a while, and that was still really over. And you still had ECW as that, like, alternative third, and it was really fun back then to, oh my God, Sid Vicious showed up in ECW, killed John Cronus, and then left and was never seen again. That stuff was really fun. It was cool. And then, there was a lot of really wild things that happened then that we're probably not going to see something close to that again. I think it was handled poorly, but, like, the fact that at one point we had a WWF contracted wrestler and a WCW contracted wrestler have a match for the ECW
title. Yep.
Like, that's probably, you know what I mean? Like, when is that going to happen? Are we ever going to see a contracted AEW guy and a contracted WWF guy in a Ring of Honor title match? It's probably not going to go down.
Right.
But so far as best, I don't know, man. It's hard to say. Like, I think it depends on your personal preference.
Right.
I think the product now in ring right now, it's really good. Some people, like a grittier, more traditional stuff where it's a little bit uglier, which is totally fine. But, like, man, the stuff in ring right now that guys are doing is just amazing, physically and athletically speaking.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think that them hitting, like Seth Rollins hitting the curb stomp multiple times, a pedigree, do you think that's kind of overdone now with people hitting the finishers multiple
100%.
times? Or
100%. I would love to see. I feel like, especially in the WWE right now, there's only two finishers. It's your finish or it's a roll-up.
Yeah,
that's it. Like, Roman Reigns does a powerbomb every so often, and for some dumb reason, the crowd still acts surprised when the guy kicks out. He's never won a match with that. Ever.
It's like when Cena used to do that leg drop off the top rope, and they're like, you know how many people he's put away with that? It's like, none.
Yeah,
Never seen him do it.
Name 4.
Yeah.
Some guys, I think that it works, but like my problem with it is that, like, okay, Orton, for example, you know what the finish is, you know it, and that's his whole thing. I get that, and his career is built around it, and that's fine. But it sucks when that is applied to everyone else. Like, one of my favorite matches ever, Orton hits the power slam, gets the cover, Christian kicks out, and people are shocked, and I'm like, why are you surprised? He's never won with that power slam. Could, because it looks great.
Yeah.
Very easily could. But, like, most of the time, he doesn't even bother going for the pin. Like, how are you shocked at this?
It's kind of like the multi-person suplex off the turnbuckle anymore. Like,
Yeah, you
Tower
see
game.
that all. Yeah.
the tower suplex. Everyone does it. Like,
When there's a
Suicide
multi-person
dive,
match.
diving
Yeah.
shove. Every match.
yep.
All right, you guys have anything else for Rose for this this time at least?
Are you ready for Dreamwave, and are you ready for Shark Bait at Journey Pro, and are you ready for Chiron on at Zao Live?
Definitely. On all fronts. I have no idea what I'm doing at Dreamwave, but yeah, my body is ready. I've got a lot of cool ideas for the match with Sharkbait, and I've got some cool ideas for the match with Chiron. So, yeah, I'm good.
And when is Journey Pro? The date?
Thursday, the 24th.
Okay. Next week.
And me and Shane will be Izzy will be front row for your match against Chiron, but me and Shane will be front row, Dreamwave, and Zawa.
Oh, awesome.
It's going to be good to be back home. I'm not from that area, but Dreamwave is where I met you and Bobby and all of them.
You know what?
It's going to be good to be back home.
I say right before we end this, just a really short, have him like just get in the character and just do a little quick Chiron coming for you or whatever.
He is his
Oh,
character.
I got to go back to like just classic lines that I love that I've stolen from Taker. Then, Chiron, they keep talking about how you're half my age. Do you have any idea what I've done in those extra years? Boy, I've crippled more people than polio. You ain't gonna be nothing but another germ in a petri dish that I light on fire.
There we go. All right. All right.
Alrighty. All right, everybody. Again, this is Christian Rose. Go follow him. What's your Twitter again?
At Bitter Lunatic.
Alrighty. And thank you guys for stopping out. And that's all I got. Bye, guys.
Yep. See ya.
See y'all later.